So I'm going to be talking about Merb, and it's not going to be very in-depth or mind-blowing, but I used it recently in a side project, so I figured I'd let everybody know a little bit about it and what I did with it and what's possible. Well, first off, what it is, it stands for mongrel and ERB, which is actually, Rails uses eRuby by default to do all of its compiling of templates and stuff, but Merb uses eRubius, which is faster, but we can get into that later. It was created by Ezra, we just call him Easy Mobius is his screen name. So it was created by Ezra, and he actually, there's a Merb IRC channel, and he's usually on the Ruby on Rails IRC channel, so he's very helpful and helped me out with some of my problems, and really has made a neat app. His blog is at, I don't have internet anymore, which is not a big deal, it's fine. It's brain splat with the .at, it's genius, I like it. He has some good entries, and it's a cool blog to check out. Put it in your RSS reader. Alright, so what Merb is all about is basically, it was done originally, I believe, out of a need to have a better file upload handler, because the way Rails does file uploads, you can't have like concurrent uploads going on, and it's kind of messy, and it's difficult to get like the upload progress bar going. So Merb was created to talk directly to Mongrel and what Mongrel does with uploads to make that whole process a lot easier. So it's a really fast framework because it's lightweight. It has a lot less of the overhead that Rails does, and it talks directly to Mongrel, which also makes it able to do concurrent connections, which is, the issue with Rails is we have to put the proxy in front of it and run multiple Mongrel processes because we can't take care of a few at the same time. As I mentioned, the file upload thing, it's great for doing file uploads. So if you have an app that has a lot of file uploading, it could be a good idea to use Merb for that portion of the app. It's really lightweight. There's not much code, which is always good, just like image science. It's not meant to be a mini Rails, and that line can always get kind of blurry, like, oh, is this just another framework? It's in a conversation with Ezra, he said it's more of a mini action pack. So if you look at the Rails code base, you can see how it's all kind of separated. So he's trying to focus more on those key parts of the framework as opposed to trying to make a whole new framework. I like it because it's something different. It's just always cool to learn something new and play with something new. And on that note, it's a really great learning tool because you generally, it's probably not going to be able to do the thing you want it to do right out of the box, so you're going to have to add some functionality to it. So then you get to dig into the code and see what's going on and play with it. So I think it's a great idea. What can it do? It can basically do, anything you want to, just depending upon what you add to it. What it can do well are the file uploads. It also has a nice little authentication mix-in, which does like HTTP authentication straight out of the box without you having to do anything or mix in any other type of auth method. None of the helpers are built into it, which I'll get into that later. So it's not a great idea right out of the box to use for like form handling if you're going to deal with errors and putting the values back into the form and all that good stuff. You're going to want to add those helpers, which I actually did for an app. And more functionality is being added all the time. Ezra's pretty active on it, and I think there's a pretty big community around it that are continuing to improve it. So to show you a little bit of what it looks like, it comes with a couple examples, and Ezra put basically a sample app together that has a bunch of code in it to basically demonstrate what is possible. Is my Twilight theme contrast rich enough? Yeah. So first, start with I'll go with the folder structure first. So the way it's set up is basically you have everything within dist is your application. So this is done so that you can just push the dist directory off to your production server when it's time to go to production, and you don't need anything outside of it. Outside of it, there's basically a log directory, and then scripts, which there really aren't much in there now, but you add your own, or I'm sure there'll be some more convenient scripts, probably some generating scripts right now. There's no generators to help you get going either. You just kind of create everything on your own. But within dist, it looks a lot like a Rails app. You've got the app directory, which has your controllers, helpers, models, and views. Helpers were just added in the latest release of Merb, and I haven't done much with them, but they're helpers basically just like helpers in Rails. And then in the comp directory, you've got basically the really important one is Merb init, which starts up Merb. And Merb uses active record when you need it. It's closely tied to it, and as far as your models and stuff, you're obviously going to need that. So this here just requires active record, establishes a connection, and then it includes the files that you're going to need to work with. So it goes ahead and goes into directories we're going to need. He's working on adding a plugin kind of way of doing things as well, so you can do plugins and whatnot. But that's all the comp you need there, and then you put your own configuration here, things that you want to add to mix into whatever app you're doing, also in Merb init. And then the Merb YAML is the configuration for the Merb server in and of itself. You tell it what port to go on, whether or not you want it to automatically reload the files. So if you're in development mode, you can make changes and not have to restart the Merb server. He's also built in some pretty cool, as far as session stuff goes, you can do DRB sessions or active record stores. And I haven't played with it, but he was talking about how you could go from a Rails session to a Merb session very easily. You could do that kind of blindly and behind the scenes. So, you can pass from a Rails controller to a Merb controller and keep the session data, which is nice. And then also, if you wanted to have basic authentication, you can just mix in basic auth with a username and password and what host it's on. And then you can set up clusters or, tell it whether or not you want it to be a daemon. And then router, this is where you put your routes. So the way it does routes is kind of interesting. Upon startup, it'll actually take these routes that were made and create, it'll compile Rails methods, which basically match these routes. So it compiles the necessary regex to match these routes and then send it on to the right portion of your app. And you can read about that in the README. So there's a configuration. There's also, if you do have the uploading, this is for the Mongrel upload plugin. You have to install that. It's a gem. You can configure how the Mongrel upload will work. And then to start a Merb app, you type Merb. So his sample app is now running on 4000. I mean, my app is running on 4000. That's odd. I've got an idea. Oh dear. His sample app basically has the ability to upload files and do some posts, and the app in and of itself isn't very impressive. It was going to show the file upload, but the code is what it's there for, to demonstrate the things that you can do. It's not extremely well documented, but he's going to make a tutorial shortly, which basically says various function calls and how to do various things. But as you can see, you can just make redirect calls. You call render when you want it to render. It won't automatically render. You have to call render if you want it to render anything. There's render XML. He has some JavaScript, so it'll render JavaScript, and you can even do some of the RJS type stuff. It has the built-in prototype helpers and all that jazz. He demonstrates the file uploading, and then as well as a few other good things. So it's a nice starting point. If you make an app, you can just go through this and kind of see how things are done and move on from there. Now on my app, I commented that out because I tried to make it shorter. But what I needed was a number of, basically I just ported from Action View helpers. I ported the helpers over, the ones that I needed, over to this app and loaded them when it initiates, so that I can do, my form helper type stuff, date helpers to make my drop downs and all that fun stuff in the view layer. I simply include those when Merb starts up. So, before I just required the file and included it, this is just a, hodgepodge quick way of including everything. But I had to do some hacking with the old Rails helpers, and what I hope to do eventually is make it, nice and clean and have just a new lightweight form helper. The reason I chose Merb in the first place was I was creating a small app that was mostly static files and just had a couple pieces of dynamic stuff going on, where someone could add schedule items, and those were shown to people, and then you could also register, which would basically, there wasn't much to the registration. It was just give us your name and email, and then we would store that ourselves. So I didn't think it was worthy of the entire Rails stack, and I thought it was a little too much for just doing camping, so I decided, well, I'll play with something new and I'll use Merb. But to do the form stuff right, if I want to be able to handle errors, I just realized how powerful those helpers were. So playing with those helpers, getting those in wasn't too bad, and then you go to the next level where I would like to do the more exciting things, like the form for helper, which allows you to pass a block in and stuff. So there's some hacking that was done, and eventually I hope to make a nice little form helper that you could mix in with Merb fairly easily. And that's basically it. I would show you what's going on, but I think it's running this other app, so not good. I'll figure that out later, I'm sure. So that's basically it, I guess. That's all I have to bring to the table. Any questions? I can try, but no guarantees. Cool. Play with Merb, it's fun.
That concludes this episode of the SD.RB podcast. See you next time.